The Arctic, a land of stark beauty, brutal cold, and ancient secrets. But today, the secrets are washing away. The ice is shrinking, and with it, a desperate struggle for survival is unfolding. This is the story of one family caught in the crosshairs of a changing world, and the strange hitchhikers clinging to her back. This video is about a team of researchers who encountered a polar bear and her cub adrift on a rapidly melting iceberg. But this wasn't just any polar bear encounter. They soon realized the mother was battling a hidden struggle, a heavy incrustation of barnacles, an anomaly in these frigid waters. Join us as we uncover this extraordinary story and explore the deeper implications for the Arctic's future. A routine expedition. The Arctic Ocean, 79 degrees north. The research vessel Polaris, a sturdy ship built to withstand the crushing force of ice, cuts through the frigid waters. Inside, a team of scientists led by the seasoned Dr. Iris Thorne are hard at work. Their mission, to study the fragile Arctic ecosystem and document the devastating effects of climate change. For years, they've braved blizzards and sub-zero temperatures, meticulously collecting data on ice thickness, ocean salinity, and wildlife populations. Dr. Thorne, a veteran of countless Arctic expeditions, adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses as he reviewed satellite imagery showing alarming rates of ice melt. The data painted a grim picture, confirming their worst fears. The Arctic was changing faster than predicted. Each day brought more open water, disrupting the delicate balance of the food chain and forcing iconic creatures like the polar bear into increasingly desperate situations. Despite the daunting challenges, the team remained dedicated, driven by a sense of urgency and a shared commitment to understanding and protecting this vital region. A change in the wind, a sudden bite of cold, hinted at a shift in the weather. Something was coming. Polar bear, 11 o'clock. The cry came from Maya, a young marine biologist perched on the observation deck. Dr. Thorne grabbed his binoculars, his heart quickening. Polar bear sightings were becoming less frequent in their usual research area, a stark indicator of their dwindling numbers. Through the powerful lenses, he saw them, a mother and her cub, stranded on a small, isolated iceberg. The iceberg itself was a fraction of the size they usually saw bears inhabiting, a precarious island in a vast ocean. Excitement rippled through the team. A mother and cub offered a precious opportunity to study polar bear behavior and assess the health of the next generation. But as they observed the pair, a sense of unease began to settle in. The mother seemed unusually lethargic, her movements slow and labored. The cub, though active, stayed close to its mother, almost as if sensing her distress. There was something not quite right. Dr. Thorne made the call. "Prepare the Zodiac. We're going to get a closer look. Approach with caution, maintain a safe distance, and document everything." The Zodiac, a small inflatable boat, was their vessel for navigating the icy waters. As they drew nearer, the wind carried the mournful cry of a lone seal, a sound that seemed to amplify the isolation of the bears on their shrinking island. The team's anticipation was now mixed with growing concern, a feeling that something unexpected awaited them. As the Zodiac cautiously approached, the researchers got their first clear view of the mother bear. A collective gasp swept through the small boat. Covering her flanks, shoulders, and even her head were thousands of barnacles, encrusted like grotesque jewelry. They were barnacles unlike any the team had ever seen in the Arctic. Large, brownish-gray, and densely packed. "Incredible, Dr. Thorne murmured, his voice a mix of disbelief and scientific curiosity. "I've never seen anything like it." Barnacles were a rarity in these frigid waters, typically found in warmer climates. How had this polar bear become so heavily infested? The team speculated. Had she ventured too far south in search of food, picking up the barnacles in warmer waters? Or was this a sign of a more alarming shift? Warmer ocean currents pushing barnacle populations further north. The barnacles clearly burdened the bear. Her movements were restricted, and she constantly scratched against the ice, trying to relieve the incessant itching. Each movement seemed to require an enormous effort, and the cub nuzzled against her, seemingly trying to offer comfort. The researchers could see raw patches of skin beneath the barnacles, evidence of her desperate attempts to dislodge them. The sight of this magnificent creature, weakened and suffering, stirred a deep sense of empathy within the team. They knew they couldn't simply stand by and watch, but what could they do? The precarious situation demanded a careful and considered response, a moral dilemma to intervene or observe. Back on the Polaris, the research team huddled in the mess hall, the faces illuminated by the glow of laptops and satellite phones. The air was thick with debate. "We can't just leave her there," Maya argued, her voice filled with emotion. "She's suffering, and the barnacles will only get worse." "But intervening is risky," countered Ben, the team's veterinarian. "Tranquilizing. A polar bear is dangerous, and we don't know what effect the drugs will have on her or the cub. We could do more harm than good." Dr. Thorne listened intently, weighing the arguments. "We have a responsibility to help," he said finally. "But we also have to consider the ethical implications. Are we interfering with nature, or are we mitigating the impact of human-caused climate change?" The team discussed the options. Capturing the bear and bringing her back to the ship for treatment was a logistical nightmare. The stress of captivity could be fatal. Removing the barnacles on the Iceberg was also fraught with risk. They would need to get close to the bear, exposing themselves to danger. And what if the bear woke up prematurely? As the debate raged on, the Iceberg continued to shrink, battered by the relentless waves. The weather was also turning, with dark clouds gathering on the horizon, promising a storm. Dr. Thorne contacted several leading polar bear experts via satellite phone, seeking their advice. The consensus was clear. The bear's condition was dire, and intervention was warranted. The risks were high, but the potential rewards, saving the life of a mother and her cub, were even greater. A decision had to be made, and quickly. The weight of that decision settled heavily on Dr. Thorne's shoulders. The storm was closing in. Driven by the dwindling time, the team sprang into action. Ben prepared a tranquilizer dart, carefully calculating the dosage based on the bear's estimated weight, while others gathered the necessary equipment, barnacle scrapers, antiseptic solutions, and thick protective gloves. Maya prepped the Zodiac, ensuring the engine was running smoothly and the inflatable pontoons were fully inflated. The air was thick with a nervous energy, a mix of excitement and apprehension. Dr. Thorne briefed the team, emphasizing the importance of safety. "We're dealing with a wild animal in a highly unpredictable environment," he said, his voice firm. "Follow my instructions to the letter. If anything goes wrong, we abort the mission immediately." Dressed in thick thermal suits and life vests, the team boarded the Zodiac, the small boat bobbing precariously on the choppy waves. As they approached the Iceberg, the mother bear watched them warily, her eyes narrowed. The cub huddled close, whimpering softly. Ben steadied the dart gun, took a deep breath, and fired. The dart struck the bear in the shoulder. She flinched, roared in surprise, and then staggered. The tranquilizer was taking effect. The team held their breath, waiting anxiously as the bear slowly succumbed to the drug, her movements becoming more sluggish. Finally, she collapsed onto the ice, her breathing heavy but regular. The operation had begun, but the most dangerous part was yet to come. The Iceberg, now even smaller, offered little room to maneuver, and the storm clouds were gathering overhead, threatening to unleash their fury. Beneath the surface, revealing the extent of the infestation, With the mother bear safely tranquilized, the team cautiously approached her, their movements slow and deliberate. The stench was overwhelming, a pungent mix of salt, decay, and something else, something acrid and unsettling. Up close, the extent of the barnacle infestation was even more horrifying than they had imagined. The barnacles were not just on the surface, they were deeply embedded in the bear's skin, their sharp edges digging into the flesh. As the team began to carefully scrape away the barnacles, they revealed raw, inflamed skin underneath. Some areas, ulcerated and infected. Ben worked meticulously, using a variety of tools to remove the stubborn crustaceans, while Maya carefully cleaned the wounds with antiseptic solution. The process was slow and painstaking, each barnacle clinging stubbornly to the bear's skin. Hours passed, and the team worked tirelessly, their hands numb from the cold, their faces etched with concentration. With each barnacle removed, the bear's true suffering became clearer. The team realized that the infection had spread, causing immense pain and weakness. Just as they were starting to clean the wounds, a researcher noticed something strange. While taking blood samples, he noticed abnormally elevated levels of a pollutant in the bear's system. He decided to investigate. The team knew that they had to hurry, as the tranquilizer would eventually wear off, putting them all at risk. The cub's health and unexpected findings. While the rest of the team focused on the mother bear, Dr. Thorne dedicated himself to the cub. He carefully examined the young bear, checking its vital signs and looking for any signs of illness or injury. To everyone's relief, the cub appeared to be in good health, playful and curious, seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding around it. It was a small victory, a flicker of hope amidst the grim reality. The team breathed a collective sigh of relief. At least one member of this family was thriving. Meanwhile, the researcher who had taken the blood samples from the mother bear rushed back to the makeshift lab on the Polaris. He needed to understand what those elevated pollutant levels meant. Back on the Iceberg, the sky was getting darker, and the wind was picking up, whipping the waves into a frenzy. Time was running out. The researcher returned, his face grim. The blood sample revealed high concentrations of persistent organic pollutants, POPs, chemicals that have been linked to immune suppression, reproductive problems, and increased vulnerability to disease in polar bears. The barnacles were only part of the problem. The bear was also battling a hidden enemy, a toxic legacy of human industrial activity. Just then, a muffled groan came from the mother bear. The tranquilizer was wearing off. As the mother bear began to stir, the team sprang into action, quickly administering a reversal drug to counteract the effects of the tranquilizer. They backed away cautiously, giving her space to recover. Slowly, groggily, she lifted her head, her eyes unfocused. She blinked, trying to make sense of her surroundings. The team watched with bated breath as she struggled to her feet, her legs unsteady. She swayed for a moment, then regained her balance. Her gaze fell upon her cub, who rushed to her side, nuzzling her legs. A wave of tenderness washed over the team as they witnessed the reunion. The mother bear licked her cub affectionately, a silent expression of gratitude. But the moment was bittersweet. They had removed the barnacles and treated her wounds, but they couldn't undo the damage caused by the pollutants in her system. The iceberg was also shrinking rapidly, now barely large enough to support the two bears. The waves crashed against its edges, threatening to wash them into the icy water. With a heavy heart, the team knew they had to leave them. They boarded the Zodiac and retreated to the Polaris, leaving the mother and cub alone on their precarious island. As they pulled away, they couldn't help but wonder if they had done enough. Had they truly helped the bear, or had they simply prolonged her suffering? The uncertainty gnawed at them. The fate of the polar bear family remained uncertain, hanging in the balance. Securing safe passage Back on the Polaris, Dr. Thorne made a difficult decision. The iceberg was too small, the storm too close, and the mother bear too weakened. Leaving them to fend for themselves was no longer an option. He contacted the Arctic Wildlife Authority and requested an emergency helicopter evacuation. Time was of the essence. Within hours, the rumble of a helicopter engine echoed across the icy landscape. The chopper hovered above the iceberg, the downdraft whipping up snow and ice. A team of wildlife specialists rappelled down, quickly assessing the situation. They agreed with Dr. Thorne's assessment. The bears needed to be moved to a safer location. Using specialized tranquilizer guns, they carefully sedated the mother and cub, ensuring their safe transport. Suspended in slings beneath the helicopter, the bears were airlifted to a remote wildlife sanctuary on a nearby island, a place where they could recover and receive the long-term care they needed. The team on the Polaris watched as the helicopter disappeared into the distance, carrying the polar bear family to safety. A sense of relief washed over them, mingled with exhaustion and a deep sense of satisfaction. They had done everything they could to help, but their work was far from over. The underlying problem remained. Climate change was threatening the entire Arctic ecosystem, pushing polar bears and other wildlife to the brink. The rescue of the barnacle-covered bear was a victory, but it was also a stark reminder of the challenges ahead. The question was, how would the polar bear family adapt to their new environment? Climate change and the Arctic's future. The Polaris continued its journey through the Arctic, navigating a landscape transformed by melting ice and rising temperatures. Glaciers that once stretched for miles had retreated, leaving behind barren, rock and murky waters. Ice floes that once provided vital hunting grounds for polar bears had shrunk, forcing them to swim longer distances in search of food. The Arctic was changing, and the changes were happening fast. Scientists estimate that the Arctic is warming at twice the rate of the rest of the planet. As the ice melts, it exposes darker ocean water, which absorbs more sunlight, further accelerating the warming trend. This creates a dangerous feedback loop, pushing the Arctic ecosystem towards a tipping point. The story of the barnacle-covered bear is a microcosm of this larger crisis. Rising ocean temperatures are allowing barnacle populations to expand their range, encroaching on Arctic waters and creating new threats for marine wildlife. The pollutants found in the bear's blood are another symptom of the problem. These chemicals, released into the environment by human activity, accumulate in the food chain, poisoning Arctic animals and disrupting their health. What we're seeing in the Arctic is a warning sign, says Dr. Thorne, his voice filled with concern. It's a glimpse into the future, a future where climate change is wreaking havoc on ecosystems around the world. The long-term implications are dire. As the Arctic continues to warm, sea levels will rise, threatening coastal communities. Weather patterns will become more erratic, leading to more extreme storms and droughts. The delicate balance of the global ecosystem will be disrupted, with potentially catastrophic consequences. But there is still hope. If we act now, we can slow the pace of climate change and protect the Arctic for future generations. If you're finding this story as moving and impactful as we do, please take a moment to hit the like button below. And if you want to stay informed about the ongoing challenges facing our planet and its incredible wildlife, subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories from the front lines of conservation. Your support helps us continue to bring these important issues to light.